think about what you would like to see in the summary that appears in the newspaper when you die. You don't want it to be, he made not only $100,000 a year, but he got up to $115,000 a year before he kicked. What's the point, right? It's like, what did he do with his life? Who were his relationships that mattered to him? And how was he with his kids? And how was he with his partner? And how was he in his things that he accomplished and what he brought forward, and what he, what's the legacy? What's the real legacy?
Did you know that each one of us had a ruling planet? And a ruling planet is not your chart ruler or final dispositor. What your ruling planet is your patron saint, your den mother, your corporate sponsor and life coach, all wrapped up into one. Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom, and I'm your weekly horoscope columnist here on Astrology Hub. And today, I wanted to talk to you about ruling planets for unruly times. In this 3-week course, you'll learn about your ruling planet and why it's the planet that's always looking out for you, no matter where it is in the sky. You'll also learn about the other planets in your chart as we delve into their meanings through history and myth and art. There are 12 units of lessons in both video and audio format with transcripts, plus an excerpt from my original book, Ruling Planets, published in 2002 and no longer in print. Finally, you may even get a chance to get a live chart reading with me on the Ruling Planets for Unruly Times live Q&A scheduled for June 1st. All of this for $197. What I love about that is that you have this for a lifetime. You can come back and view this course whenever you want, and you can return to it as many times as you need to for reference, to brush up, or just enjoy a journey through the rich lore of the planets. If you're interested, you can enroll at astrologyhub.com/rulingplanets. I can't wait to see you in class.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to your weekly astrological weather. I am so happy that you have decided to join us here today. We have a very special guest. We always have special guests. And Henry Seltzer has become one of the favorites here on the weekly weather. So Henry is here to talk to us about the astrology of May 15th through the 21st. Just a little bit about him. He has a graduate degree in linguistics. He studied computer science at MIT. He has been practicing astrology since 1975. He created Time Passages astrology software. He's written the books on the 10th planet, Revelations from the Astrological Eras, and the ephemeris of trans-Neptunian KBO planets. He's also going to be, for our Inner Circle members, an Inner Circle guide this upcoming month. So this is going to be an amazing experience with him. I'm going to have him tell us about his mastery class at the end of the weather, so all of you Inner Circle members can get excited about what is to come there. And Henry, it's just so great to have you back. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks.
All right. And I got a little sneak peek into this week behind the scenes because Henry said, this is a really, really big week. So tell us why you said that.
Well, the main thing about it is Pluto. There's just so much Pluto. And, as we get closer towards the end of the week, when we're actually at the moment of Friday, which is the new moon in late Taurus, we have strong Pluto and a grand cross in that new moon. So, and then Pluto was also important in the solar eclipse from way back from 30 days ago. So Pluto's just been around and we have to make our peace with Pluto.
Henry, even a couple of weeks ago when Christopher Renstrom was on the weekly weather before the lunar eclipse, he was also highlighting Pluto because Pluto was stationed to go retrograde. So Pluto was just like hanging out in one position the whole week. So tell us a little bit more about what it means to have a strong Plutonian week.
Well, I always say that, the question with Pluto is not whether you're going to go, but whether you're going to go willingly or whether you're going to go with a big struggle. Pluto comes along and, we really have the attitude, and I think it's the right attitude, that the universe is on our side, that things happen for a reason, that, sometimes the thing falls through and you can't believe it and you don't want it to fall through and you keep trying to make it happen, it keeps falling through. Later on, you find out that was the best thing that could have happened. There was another opportunity waiting. Same thing with getting fired from your job. The day you get fired from your job, it's a big shock. And you come home, I'm just thinking of a typical scenario, but you come home, you say, oh my God, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me. I just got fired. 10 years later, somebody's talking about how that was, and you say, best day of my life. I got fired. So, that we have a perspective on it. And the perspective is usually because we're human to be in the flow, in what's happening with our lives. This is where my relationship is at. This is where all these other things are at. This is where the people are here together. And when that shifts and changes, we get freaked out about it and we have to adjust, and it's difficult. So I feel like Pluto is kind of keeping us honest. It's keeping us flowing along, because what is the process of nature but things changing, things, having a rebirth. It's death and rebirth. The typical metaphor for it is the butterfly. The cocoon happens. The butterfly eventually flies free, and you go, what a beautiful sight. And the thing is, it's not much fun for the caterpillar. Everything dissolves. Here I am going to my next stage and everything's dissolving on me and my whole body is dissolving. So it's difficult. And so you can have an attitude, you can say, well, I know this is for the best. You can somehow abstract yourself from that day-to-day momentary reaction of, no, this is loss. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this habit. I'm having this great habit of whatever it might be. And you find you have to change it. You're getting too much cholesterol in your diet or whatever it might be. You don't want to do it. I love my pancakes or whatever it might be. But, later on you find, well, it's really fun to be less cholesterol. I like this new part of myself, this new gig. So I liken it to a young child. Oftentimes they don't want to go to bed. And we know it's the best thing for them. So there's two ways that child goes to bed. And one way is that child grabs every single banister on the way up the stairs because they won't, they're grabbing the next one, holding back. And that's the way sometimes we take our Pluto transits. And that's why they have such a reputation for being difficult. But if you can be okay with it and say, well, I guess mom and dad know what they're doing. I'll be okay. So it's attitude.
Okay. So we have tell us what Pluto is doing this week that is making it particularly activated. And then I know that you said that there's 3 planets changing signs.
That's
so
true.
Not just Pluto, right? So how does this all come together?
Well, so I answer your last question first. Pluto is at 0 degrees, as you just mentioned, just retrograded on the 1st of May. And so it's at 0 degrees and it's going backwards even closer to 0, like it's about a quarter of a degree into Aquarius, and it's going to lose all that and go back into Capricorn eventually as it's retrograding, So right now, though, this week, Pluto is sitting at 0 degrees of Aquarius. So guess what happens when Mars gets to its ingress and goes to 0 degrees of Leo? Exact opposition, partile opposition, same degree with Pluto is at this first, in the first degree of Aquarius. And then the Jupiter ingresses into Taurus. When Jupiter hits 0 degrees Taurus, look out, that's pretty wild. It's square to the Pluto and to the future position of Mars at 0 degrees of Leo. So, but these are all, it's a T-square. In other words, it's a T-square to Jupiter, but Jupiter really amps up the effect of Mars opposite Leo, Mars opposite Pluto, which is happening really from the very beginning of the week. I mean, it's already kind of getting closer. And as the week goes on, it gets closer and closer, because when Mars gets to the last degree, it's really close to the whole situation. So it's all beginning to form up, and we're beginning to feel the effects.
Okay, so a couple questions on that, Henry. First, when does Pluto officially go back into Capricorn?
Oh, that would be in June 11th.
Okay.
And of course, it's going to keep going backward for a while until finally it gets out of it, not until January of 2024.
Wait. Okay, so it's going to be going backwards into Capricorn. What degree does it go back to in Capricorn?
I can tell you that. That is the 27 degrees, 2753 is where it stations direct on October 11th.
Okay, so it's going all backwards into Capricorn until October 11th, and then it's going to turn around, come back through 28 and 29 degrees Capricorn and back into Aquarius by January of 2024, right?
True.
Okay.
Yes.
From your perspective, and I'm asking the astrologers this because this is so significant. This Plutonian movement that's happening right now. Into Aquarius, then back into Capricorn, then back into Aquarius. And because Pluto has been such a huge player for all of us for a long time, I think it's important for us to understand the significance of Pluto going back into Capricorn. What do you think the message is there? What do you think, if the universe is on our side, as you said, what do you think the universe is setting up for us with this movement back and forth between Aquarius and Capricorn?
Well, I think it's like a little kid opens the door and there's Aquarius on the doorstep. And the kid goes, "Oh my God," and slams the door. And then he goes, "Well, I'll try again." He opens it again.
But why did he slam the door the first time? Is it because Aquarius was scary, or because he wasn't ready for Aquarius? Like, what was the whole point of that?
Yes, exactly. So I feel like we're not always completely ready for it. And it's a big shift. I mean, this particular shift from Capricorn to Aquarius, and the funny thing is they're both traditionally ruled by Saturn.
Right.
However, there's a whole world of difference, isn't there, between Capricorn and Aquarius? And looking at it the other way too, the age of Aquarius, which is the transition not from Capricorn to Aquarius, which is what we're seeing with this back and forth, but from Pisces to Aquarius, when we're talking about the ages, right? The age of Pisces from the time of Christ onward, from the 0 and 2,000-year cycle is ending, and we're getting to the age of Aquarius, which is a shift that we're all anticipating. It's more of a humanistic shift as opposed to a faith age, which is what we had when we were so far into what's beyond the world. It's like, oh, my life is kind of crap, but I'm going to go to heaven, and that's going to be the thing. But then we lose that, right? So people aren't so tuned into that anymore. It's not like, oh, I'm really happy I'm going to be going to heaven. It's more like, what can I do right here, right now? How many little cars and planes and things can I get before I have to go and depart? So it's a materialistic age, and it's a different. And then this humanistic age that's coming in is a spirituality based on a whole different way of seeing things, on a spirituality based on our human life, our life here right now, and has astrology in it too. As Aquarius is astrology.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. I think that's an interesting perspective. That the age of Aquarius is more of a humanistic age, and the age of Pisces was more of a kind of like a faith, like something external outside of us, but humanistic is more like of an internal focus. I'm kind of guessing, but tell me what you find out.
It's not only internal focus; it's also all of us humans here to be here with each other. It's a belief in what we can do with each other. I call it a culture of kindness. I think that what we need to really concentrate on and to have some kind of welcoming motion toward is a culture of kindness where we, just like they were starting to articulate in the 60s. The 60s was like the dream of this. I mean, it wasn't like mainstream in the 60s. It was the counterculture. It was specifically called the counterculture, right? And that is what we are trying to decide is viable right now, because we went to our opening square, that this is getting too many details, but the 60s was Pluto and Uranus together, right? And so that was the conjunction that was the 60s. And Rick Tarnas has that 15-degree orb for that conjunction. He calls it 1960 to 1972. It's pretty much perfect for what we're experiencing. But it's toward the end of that most people weren't aware of it till maybe 67 or something, right? But anyway, we hit the opening square in the 20 teens. So last decade, not 2020s, but the 20 teens, we hit that opening square, which is like, is this viable? Can we do this? Can we really make it a mainstream occurrence? So I think the culture of kindness is what we're heading toward if we can only manage to get past all the difficulties. We're having a lot of difficulties with that. We're having some birth pains with that.
That's a nice way to say it, Henry. I like that. Okay. So we have Pluto still in this retrograde very slow moving, just hanging out at 0 degrees Aquarius.
Correct.
Mars moving into Leo this week. And when Mars moves into Leo, then Mars is opposing.
Exactly opposing.
Pluto. And then we have
0 degree mark.
Okay. And then we have Jupiter moving into Taurus, forming a square
And that's on the 16th.
on the 16th. Okay. So this is the 16th.
It's the first one that changes signs.
Okay. The 16th. And what's the date of Mars moving into Leo?
Not until the 20th. So
20th.
even after the new moon happens.
Okay. It's after the new moon, but we're already feeling the effects of that this week. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Yes. I mean, when we get to 29 degrees, see, in the new moon, if we look at the degrees of everything, Jupiter is 0 degrees of Taurus in the new moon because that was what happened on the 16th. And the new moon is on the 19th. And then the next day, Mars will be in Leo. But at the time of the new moon, which is an important time to look at things, because when we're looking at that configuration of the new moon, we're looking at kind of the effects of the next 30 days, like the birth chart for the next 30 days of the lunation cycle. So when we look at that, we do see that Mars is right there at 29.5 degrees of Cancer, that close. And so, by the way, another planet is occupying the fourth point of a grand cross, which is to say Haumea. We don't normally think about Haumea, but these outer planets beyond Pluto that, really are declared to be planets by the IAU, the Astronomers Union, are really pretty important in charts I've been finding. Eris is the one that everybody's beginning to accept as, that is important in charts. It's as big as Pluto. It's as bright as Pluto. It's brighter than Pluto and more dense. So it's kind of the biggest one in the Kuiper belt, bigger than Pluto. Also much slower than Pluto, much further out as far as its orbit. But Haumea and Makemake are closer to the orbital period of Pluto, but they are also important in their nature planets. They're named after indigenous gods and goddesses. And this has been such a fascinating research. So Haumea, I love Haumea. It's all about knowing what the right thing is to do. It's right action, right relationship, truth telling. These people are truth tellers. I had a client with strong Haumea, and I said, "Oh, you're the type of person that when you get your change in the supermarket, you say, 'Oh, I'm sorry, you gave me $100 bill. Let me give you this back.'" Right? And so this woman was kind of responding to what I was saying. And she said, "It's funny you should mention because I found $300 in folding money in a 7-Eleven parking lot. And I took it into the store and I said, 'I found this in your parking lot and there's probably some poor person that really needs it.' And they said, 'We don't know what to do. This has never happened before.'" But they wound up advertising. They said, "This was found in the parking lot." And the person, whoever it was, never showed up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay. So Haumea is, and for people that don't know what a T-square is and a grand cross, can you explain what these things are? And
we were really close already because we were talking about how 3 points of the beginning of fixed signs were occupied by these 3 planets. We have Jupiter right there at 0 degrees of Taurus, Mars right there at 0 degrees of Leo, and opposite Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Well, the fourth point is 0 degrees of Scorpio. And during the eclipse, the big eclipse that happened, the new moon eclipse, which was, 30 days ago, it would be like April 19th, right? At that time, Haumea was at 0 degrees of Scorpio, so it occupied the fourth point. At that time, it was a T-square. Mars wasn't there, but that was a T-square with Jupiter opposite Haumea and squared to Pluto. Well, it wasn't Jupiter that was opposite. It was the new moon. The new moon eclipse was at 29 degrees and 50 minutes. So it was almost 0 degrees of Taurus. So that was a big T-square to Pluto in that eclipse, which is why Pluto has been with us all this time. So it's still with us very much so in this next lunation.
Okay. I know we've kind of dove head first into the big astrology of the week. Yeah.
We did. Yes.
Do you have a theme that you would name this week?
Well, I really think Pluto is part of the theme. I mean, it's not just Pluto because Neptune and Uranus are both featured as well this week. So we have all of the outer planets, which takes us kind of outside of ourselves. It takes us in more of a vertical dimension. I mean, you can think of the horizontal dimension as the way we do our life, like what Wordsworth called getting and spending. And what we might say is our schedules and our, I have to go to this meeting, that meeting, this doctor's appointment, these things, and I'm going to get my refrigerator stocked, and I'm going to plow the garden or whatever you're doing, right? All those things. We keep busy, but there's in the meantime, this other dimension of our lives that is in a whole different direction, which is, you could call it a spiritual direction. You could say being aware of the universe as, and of synchronicity. Uranus is connected with synchronicity, and so is astrology. And it really is a miracle that astrology works, right? You would be the first one to say that. I mean, it's like, hey, these planets, they represent these archetypes of the old man and the beautiful of female and the Mars warrior activity, and how those archetypes that have to do with such internal psychological things get involved in the planets that are just up there doing their planet thing, going around the sun, like their cycles. And somehow those are all intimately connected, and the synchronicities, including in our own lives. Like you could say that I really have to think about this person. I haven't been thinking about them. I really want to talk to them. The phone rings, right? And that's the synchronicity of that event. Or it could be just something you can see symbolically, that it really is time for me to take a look at this, because look at all these symbols coming up.
So I love this. This is taking us on a vertical dimension. And you're saying that because all of the outer planets are involved in the party this week.
Yes.
And that they represent the beyond this third dimension reality, sort of time and space and physical things. And they're opening up more of that spiritual dimension to us this week.
Yes.
Is that basically a paraphrase of what you
just said? So one way to look at it is when we see things happen, don't take it at face value. Like if you do, let's say you lose something, part of your house, has to be redone or something like that. There's all that attitude that goes into it. You can have this terrible, terrible attitude about it. Like, oh, this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have to replace my storm windows. I don't know why I have to do that. Or my deck is old and it's shot and I have to redo it. And why is that? But if you can think of it in a more sort of cosmic fashion, you can think of it as, what's that going to be like 100 years from now? And looking back on it, when mom and dad had to replace the deck, and I mean, it's all part of a bigger picture. And if we can see that, we can kind of climb the mountain mentally and see it from a distance above, and see the whole landscape, and see that it's, what are the important things, think about what you would like to see in the summary that appears in the newspaper when you die. You don't want it to be, he made not only $100,000 a year, but he got up to $115,000 a year before he kicked. I mean, what's the point, right? It's like, what did he do with his life? Who are his relationships that mattered to him? And how was he with his kids? And how was he with his partner? And how was he in his things that he accomplished and what he brought forward, and what he, what's the legacy? What's the real legacy?
I absolutely love this. And I'm hoping that when we have our inner circle new moon ceremony, this would be an amazing thing to do together, is actually write our obituaries. Like, what do we want to, what is of utmost value to us for our lives to stand for when we are no longer here? And it's an amazing exercise and practice to do. And while I'm on the new moon ceremony for the inner circle, I just need to also let you all know that we're going to be doing an incredible, there's this dance class that I've been taking here on island. That's a combination of Hawaiian hula, Tahitian hula, and urban prayer, meditation, all together. And so I've actually asked the teacher to come and do like a 20-minute sequence with us, so we could really get into our bodies and embody the astrology, and then do we usually do intention setting and a quiet time, but we could use that time for this obituary idea, which is amazing. So it's going to be a potent one. All I'm saying is, inner circle members, make sure that you are going to be there, or at least that you tune into the recording.
And that's really what I'm talking about with these outer planets, because it is a dance. Right? I mean, that's the way we really could look at our lives, is I'm involved in this very graceful movement through things, and the setbacks can be handled. And, there's an emergency over here. Let me give my attention to that. Let me calmly give my attention to that instead of losing it right along with them or whatever.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay, Henry, what else about the week? Not that that's not enough, but do you want to walk us through kind of sequentially anything we need to be aware of?
Well, the very first thing is to recognize that the weekend before the month begins is a pretty strong weekend because we have the station of Mercury to direct motion at 8:17 p.m. on Sunday night. And that's following a last quarter moon on the 12th, which was not that strong, but it brings in some of these themes also. So just being aware that we're kind of entering the week in the wake of that big weekend, and then we're heading for another big weekend at the end of it. So the two weekends bracket this week are the big deals.
Okay, so the 2 weekends on either side of this week, because you said the last weekend of the month, but you meant...
No, I didn't mean that. I meant the last weekend before this week.
Got it. Okay.
That's what I meant. The previous weekend is what I was trying to say.
And the biggest thing with that is Mercury stationing direct.
That's a big thing. And, we tend to sometimes think of that as, oh, now Mercury's direct. We're done with that. But if you think about it, Mercury's dead still in the sky. And it is the motion of Mercury that makes us have these feelings that, our mental process could be improved upon. Our schedules get messed up and we have things go awry. And it's also good for kind of meditating and thinking about where things are at. Good for review, anything beginning RE, review, reflection, reconsideration, retaking, readjusting. And it's the shadow period that starts with so the station of Mercury is kind of dramatic. At 8:17 p.m. on Sunday night, it's at 51 minutes. It's 5 degrees of Taurus, 51 minutes, all right on the nose. And then 12 hours later, Monday morning at 8:17 a.m., it's 5 degrees of Taurus, 51 minutes and a half. So it goes a half a minute in the 12 hours between. That's how slow it is. And of course, it makes sense because that's what the process is slow. It goes backwards and then it stops doing that. And then it stops and goes forward again. But it's not obviously going to change direction that quickly. So the Mercury retrograde shadow lasts until the 31st of the month. And it's really part of the retrograde cycle. I mean, I think until it's really gotten moving a little faster and recovered its lost ground, it started at 15 degrees of Taurus, went back to 5. And then when it gets to 15 degrees of Taurus in 37 minutes, again, which is not till the end of the month, it's around noon on the last day of the month, the 31st. So until all that time, we're still kind of in the Mercury retrograde. So that's the background of things. Mercury is still retrograde in the sense that we are still kind of feeling our way and introspectively thinking about things and what are the course corrections that may be the right thing, but don't make them yet because you may change your mind by the next week, right? So it's like we're trying to figure it out as the week begins. And then the other thing that happens on Monday is it brings in Neptune because, Mars is trine Neptune exact, which is also building on the weekend and part of that last quarter moon of the 12th, which is on Friday the 12th. But then by the time Monday comes around, Mars trine Neptune. And if you think about it, that is so perfect for what we're talking about because Mars is all about do, let's make it happen. And then Neptune is all about this kind of vague beyond mystical kind of thinking. So there's a sort of a mysticality to everything that we're attempting really in this, especially the beginning of the week, but it stays, in the new moon, the sun and moon are at 28 degrees of Taurus and Neptune is at 27 of Pisces. So that's a sextile. So, and the Mars has been trine. So, it's kind of at the midpoint of the Mars Neptune. So it's a pretty powerful Neptune presence, which brings in Neptune. And then you want to go day by day for a little bit. Let's talk about the days. The other thing is on the 17th, Mars is getting to the point where it's within a degree of being square to Haumea, which is at the very last degree of Libra. So the fourth point of this grand cross, Haumea was at 0 degrees of Scorpio, but it was moving backwards. So 0 degrees of Scorpio, that was square to Pluto. So that it really brings Haumea into this picture and it's the truth telling. And I think it's really important to mention it's been in these lunations since February. And we started to see all these headlines about telling the truth. Telling the truth has been in every headline. I wrote about when I was writing about the new moon in February. I said, well, this is about having your act together, knowing what natural law is. It's connection with nature, but it's also connection with that feeling of what's the right thing. A lot of times we know the right thing. We don't always do it, but we know it, right? We kind of know this is the right way to treat this person. Oh, I wish I had done that, or this is the right way to. Telling the truth is another thing. It's like, you really should tell the truth because that way people with some kind of at least head start on trying to work things through. So I was saying that on the 17th, Mars was square to Haumea. And then if we look at the 18th, we have Mercury also sextile to Saturn. And Mercury sextile to Saturn is very interesting because that was part of the retrograde station as well. So Mercury slowing down to 551, which is where it stopped. But Saturn has been at 6 degrees of Pisces. So the whole time that Mercury was slowing down, stopping, and then getting started again, it was right near that 6-degree mark. And so that really increases that whole feeling of Mercury not being able to get things done, things going, the Saturn effect is kind of similar to Mercury retrograde. It's like you can't really get things done. The thoughts go slower. Maybe lessons learned, with Saturn. But it's been part of this retrograde being so intense. And then the 19th, we have the new moon. So the new moon is kind of the big news of the week, I think, because it's a very strong new moon. It has this grand cross in it, including Haumea 29 degrees of Libra. And Mars is 29 degrees of Cancer, so perfect square. And Pluto is at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and 0 degrees of Taurus is occupied by Jupiter. So we have this grand cross at the very beginning of fixed signs. We're 1 degree away from them. I think it's pretty powerful. Uranus is also part of this situation. Uranus was big in the full moon eclipse of the 5th because Uranus was parallel to the sun and moon, and also pretty close conjunction also. It was conjunct to Uranus at 16 degrees of Taurus. So Uranus has been in the astrology also. And I think Uranus is even prominent in this current situation because it's still parallel with the sun. So all the outer planets.
Henry, what does parallel mean? I don't know that that's a term that everyone hears all the time.
Well, it's called declinational aspects, and they're really important. The problem with declinational aspects is we can't see them in the chart. We see the chart as this circle, which is looking at the ecliptic from above, and all the planets are more or less the same plane as they go around the sun. So we can see the angles between them in what's called the longitudinal direction. But latitude is the other direction, and celestial latitude. And so if they happen to be at the same latitude, they also have, that's what's called parallel or contraparallel. Parallel is when they're both above the celestial equator at the same number of degrees. And then contraparallel is when one is above and one is below, but they both indicate there's a connection between the planets. It's like a minor conjunction. You can think of parallel or contraparallel as a minor conjunction between these two planets, even though they may not have any longitudinal connection.
Okay, so they may not be making any other aspects that we can see longitudinally,
Right.
but they're parallel to each other from a latitude perspective, and that makes it basically like a conjunction, but not quite as strong as a conjunction.
Yeah, probably not the same quite, but yes, definitely that's the type of thing. We combine those two energies.
And how do people see that? If we can't see it in the chart, does your software, for example, does your software show it?
Okay, well, as a matter of fact, I wanted to try to make it easy to see. So what I do is you right click on the planet and you can see all the parallels.
Oh.
With other planets.
Okay,
Yeah.
so someone could go in, and this is time passages.
Yes.
If people wanted to go in and right click on a planet, then they can see if it's parallel to something else.
And then the time passages mobile app too. We mentioned at the bottom of the discussion of the planet in the house,
Okay.
the sign. We describe all that, and then we say, by the way, it's parallel to these other planets.
Nice. Okay.
That's where we have that. It's kind of a different dimension than the regular aspects.
Well, and as you were speaking, I was back on, I don't know if it was you and I having this conversation at one point, but some of the potential developments with things like virtual reality, where we could maybe like be in a chart and actually see it multidimensionally versus just the flat papered.
Well, yes and no, because I think that would be cool. I remember at Burning Man, they were going to make a huge chart you could walk through. I don't know if they ever did it, but I think this friend of mine was going to do it. But the thing is that's kind of a cool experience, and you could be looking at the planets as they really are. But when we see it on paper, when we draw the lines between, we say, oh, here's a square between these. We're looking at kind of symbolic level.
Yeah.
Planets interact. So then just being able to note when it's within a degree, it's considered parallel or contraparallel. So this gives us the information, just kind of get the information out. And then you say, oh, there is a connection between Uranus and the full moon eclipse.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we're on Wednesday, right?
No, we got to Thursday now.
Got to Thursday.
Because
Okay.
we were talking about the 19th, which is
Right.
Thursday.
Okay.
And then the 20th is when Mars goes into Leo after that. So in the new moon, Mars is actually 29.5 degrees, but it's so close. It's still part of that it's a pretty close grand cross. And then Mars into Leo. So that magnifies again. Now you got Mars exactly opposite Pluto. There's a potential for anger to come out in situations like that. So there's another question that comes up this week is one of reactivity. Is there any way you can avoid being reactive? And what they say is you get kind of overwhelmed by that emotion. And, if you just stay with that, you might blurt something out. You might even strike somebody, and you don't want to do that because those are kind of things you can't take back. That's always going to be, oh, that's what you said then. It's always going to be, that's what you did then. And so if you can manage to go into it's almost like the same thing with a vertical dimension. If you can go into a different space, and what you might have to say is, I'll have to think about that, or can you give me a minute? Or if you're on the phone, you can say, oh, somebody's at the door. It's like, you don't have to even say you're angry. You can just say, hold on a sec. And you can kind of count to 10, they say, right? You can kind of try to get yourself into a different mode of operating with it. Try to step back and say, I have a friend who's a psychologist who says, you're never angry for the reason you think you are. And that's kind of good to remember. It seems like the triggering event is this person just ruined the souffle or whatever they might have done. And you're kind of like directing all that anger. But if you stop and think about it, it's really your stuff. You were frustrated about this and that and this another thing. And that's one reason that all of a sudden our slaves out, right? So we stop and think about owning our anger and really being, well, that's kind of my stuff that's going on here. And just try to get that perspective shift, change your thoughts about things. Because this is a time to think about that with Mars opposite Pluto, it really could happen. And it's really all week it's building up to that. So the 20th is the time of that exact opposition.
I love how that brings in the earlier conversation about also, seeing the blessings in the supposed setbacks, or the blessing in the curse, so to speak. I was thinking of that when you were talking earlier about that bigger perspective. How is this going to feel 100 years from now? What's going to happen at the moment of, me graduating or transitioning to the next life or next dimension or whatever it is? Will this souffle matter at that point? Will this whatever matter at that point? So I love that.
That's a good way to look at that.
Yeah. Like bringing it back to that. That's really helpful. Okay. So watching our reactivity, and that we're building towards that for the whole week. So I sometimes like to think too, again, this is a great reason to do things like dance and physical movement, is to just allow that energy to move so that it's not just like building up and stagnating within us and then it bursts. We're giving it the outlet that it needs to actually facilitate whatever awareness it's trying to facilitate in us, which can be so helpful.
And what I love about that is it's coming from the body. It's not coming from our conscious. Our conscious thinking is only really part of the story.
Right. Exactly. Yes. And so many times it does get pent up in our body in different places, and having the ways, the means, the awareness to move it can be so alchemically powerful.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. So now we have the weekend. What's happening in the weekend?
Well, the 20th is the weekend day. No, the 20th is Friday, isn't it? Wait a minute. No,
Right.
the 19th was, okay, I'm sorry. The 19th was, I said Thursday, but it's Friday. The 19th is Friday.
Okay.
And then the 20th is Saturday. And then the 21st is when the sun crosses into Gemini.
Wow.
The sun crossing into Gemini is, again, guess what? 0 degrees of Gemini. And so it's a trine to Pluto.
Hmm.
And of course, even the new moon at 28 degrees of Taurus was trine Pluto. But this is like, putting the exclamation point on that Pluto affecting everything, so I think I'm making it more conscious, because the sun has to do with consciousness.
Hmm.
So we're maybe becoming more conscious of some of the stuff that's going on with us and really beginning to deal with it to some extent, but we have to recognize we're still in that process of transformation this whole time. Even you could say for the next 30 days, because the new moon really triggers.
Wow. This week is stacked.
Mm.
It's like some serious energy. Henry, thank you. It's been so much fun to explore the week ahead. I'd love to get a sneak peek into the mastery class teaching that our inner circle members are going to receive on the new moon. And I know you're going to be talking about some of the lesser known planetary beings. They're not lesser in importance, but they're lesser known. So tell us a little bit about that mastery class.
Well, the mastery class I'm giving is working with Pluto, Chiron, and Eris in charts. And I have found that Eris is just as important as Pluto in charts, which is kind of a bold statement. And I went on a research path. Pardon?
That's a really bold statement. I mean,
Well,
anybody.
but it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I wound up talking about what is the house like that Eris is in, because I found that it really illuminated for me when I found out about my Eris placement. That was, I didn't have anything in Virgo, and I didn't have anything in the sixth house. And then I realized that I had those characteristics and I didn't understand it. And what I did was I wrote up Eris in the particular house, just from what it was the house meeting, and then Eris takes it. Eris is a spiritual warrior for soul intention. It goes to depth within us, just like Pluto does, and really takes it to, our real soul purpose. So I say a spiritual or feminine warrior energy for soul intention and support of soul intention. So it's so important. It's getting to where at the heart of it, what we really want, what we cannot not do. We've said that before. I remember you said you liked that phrase. So Eris is so important. And yet it's important to consider in the context of these other kind of shamanic planets. My friend Daniel Giamario, who does the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, has a list of what he calls the shamanic planets. And he said, I had Pluto when I had Chiron on that list, and now I have Eris too. So he's, seeing that as kind of part of this whole shamanic in the sense of initiation, shamanic in the sense that we can understand that we have a purpose in this life that may not be obvious in our opening stanzas of the experience. And then I found that also Haumea and Makemake are also very important in charts, which are the other officially named KBO planets besides Pluto and Eris. So talking about all of those with weekend.
Henry, really looking forward to you in the inner circle. It's going to be so much fun to have you as our astrologer guide for an entire lunar cycle, which, like you said, the energy that's happening this week, we're going to be working with for the next 30 days. So that's really exciting. And thank you for being here with our community and for being of service to this particular community and sharing your wisdom. And we're really grateful for you.
Myself as well. I'm enjoying it.
Yes. And thanks to all of you for being here, for being a part of our community, for making astrology a part of your life. Can't wait to catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.